At some point, you have wanted to escape. Not from a place, from the feeling of being alive in a way that hurts. That impulse is not weakness. It may be one of the most honest things a human being can feel. The common belief is that addiction is a choice, but that framing may be asking entirely the wrong question. Because if you look carefully at what addiction actually is, not the behavior, not the substance, but the need underneath it, you find something philosophers have been circling for centuries: the problem of suffering, and the desperate human search for anything that makes it stop. Gabor Maté, a physician who spent years working with severely addicted people in North America, made a simple but disturbing observation. Almost without exception, the people he treated had experienced significant childhood trauma, emotional neglect, or chronic pain that had never been properly addressed. They were not people who had made a reckless decision one afternoon. They were people in unbearable inner pain who had found something: alcohol, opioids, gambling, distraction in its many forms, that briefly made that pain quiet. That is what a substance does when it works. It does not simply create pleasure, it creates relief. And relief from suffering is one of the most powerful forces the human brain has ever encountered. This is why the language of moral failure misses the point. Calling addiction a weakness does not explain why thoughtful, capable people cannot simply decide to stop, or why trauma and disconnection appear so consistently in the lives of people who develop it. There is a pattern here. It is not a coincidence. Here is where it gets more unsettling. In the 1970s, psychologist Bruce Alexander ran a series of experiments that challenged how scientists thought about addiction. He placed rats in two very different conditions. In one, they were isolated in bare cages with access to drug-laced water. In the other, what he called rat park, they had space, companions, food, and activities. The isolated rats consumed the drug obsessively. The rats in rat park largely ignored it. The same substance, completely different outcomes. What Alexander's work suggested is that the opposite of addiction may not be sobriety. It may be connection. Not in a shallow sense, but the deeper experience of belonging, of purpose, of feeling that your presence in the world means something. When those things are present, suffering becomes survivable. When they are absent, something has to fill the space they leave behind. And the particular conditions of modern life, its pace, its isolation, its replacement of genuine belonging with constant digital stimulation, have become extraordinarily efficient at creating exactly that gap. This is where philosophy enters with something more than sympathy. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps and later developed what he called logotherapy, argued that the deepest human need is not pleasure, comfort, or even safety. It is meaning. Frankl observed that the people most likely to endure extreme suffering were not always the physically strongest. They were the ones who had found a reason to bear it, a purpose that made pain answerable rather than merely intolerable. He also observed the reverse. When meaning collapses, the human mind reaches for substitutes. Addiction, Frankl argued, frequently begins precisely where meaning ends. When a life loses its coherence, the mind starts reaching for anything that restores the sensation of being fully present, of mattering, of feeling real. Albert Camus described the human condition as fundamentally absurd, a creature that craves coherence and meaning, living inside a universe that offers no guarantee of either. For Camus, the impulse to escape this condition is not irrational, it is almost predictable. What matters is not the impulse, but what you choose to build in response to it. Neither Frankl nor Camus believed the answer was to pretend the suffering did not exist. Both suggested, in different ways, that the only real path was to turn toward it, to find within the pain something worth holding, something that transforms endurance into purpose. So, what does any of this mean for the way you live? If addiction is a response to suffering rather than a moral verdict on the person experiencing it, then the most useful question is not, why can't you stop? It is, what pain is this answering? That shift changes everything. It moves the conversation away from shame and toward understanding. And understanding is where genuine change first becomes possible. The first step is to look honestly at what you are escaping from, not the habit itself, but the feeling that was present before it. Loneliness, a sense of meaninglessness, unprocessed grief, a low, persistent anxiety that never fully lifts. These are not abstractions, they are specific, and they can be named, and naming them is often where the real work begins. The second step is to move toward connection rather than relying on willpower alone. What Alexander's findings suggest, and what Maté's work consistently confirms, is that isolation sustains addiction, while belonging and genuine purpose work against it. Not because connection erases suffering, but because it makes suffering feel shared and therefore survivable. Meaning does not remove pain, it gives pain somewhere useful to go. For many people, this process requires professional support, and seeking it reflects not weakness, but the honest recognition that some pain has grown beyond what one person can carry alone. That honesty itself is a form of courage. You began wanting to escape. Most people do at some point in their lives. The question philosophy keeps returning to is not how to stop feeling the weight of being alive. It is how to find something meaningful enough to carry it with you.